Rocking. Awesome. So, within the context of personal brands, first and foremost, are there any, besides yourself, obviously, are there any individuals who you believe have an amazing personal brand?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many. I mean, I think it's such a great competitive edge that smaller businesses can have over a bigger company, because there's this massive shift towards like people-to-people marketing. Like if people want to deal with other people that they feel like they can trust. There's a lot of people who have personal brands and don't even realize it, like, and then not necessarily built it online. The one that springs to mind, which I just think is just grown from strength to strength, is Gary Vaynerchuk. Guy's just killed the personal branding strategy. Another one, probably a bit more traditional, Richard Branson. Excellent personal brander, really done. I can't believe he's managed to keep up with the times as well as he has. He's the most followed person on LinkedIn. He's producing blog content every day. You know, he plays a big role in it. But I guess, you know, it comes down to knowing who you are and being comfortable like showing all of that, because people appreciate vulnerability, right? They appreciate like being able to connect with you in a way which isn't artificial. So most people, they struggle being authentic because they don't know who they are. You know, and so I think that's the first point. From my own perspective, like, you know, that was a long journey. I did a lot of personal development to work out who I was, and had to peel back a few layers. And then, you know, there's some people who don't like who you are, you know, and that's okay. That's going to happen if you're authentic. And so another reason that a lot of people get held back is because they peel back the layers. A few people say some negative stuff, and they don't like that, so they stop. So you've got to be able to push and keep going. And if you did drill down, I'll list a few others: Grant Cardone, Dan Locke, you know, people in the comedy space like Ricky Gervais. Like, they're great personal branders, right? If you speak to them and ask them about like haters and negative comments and all that sort of stuff, they've all got their own way of dealing with it. But it's huge. Like, you look in the comment section of YouTube videos, it's absolutely massive. And I guess it's something which is fresh on my mind, because it's something that I've only just come across recently. Like, it's in the last 6 months, there's been a big conversation that I've been having with other social media marketers about this topic, because I've started to see it popping up. You know, I'm trying to work out how I feel about it, and you know, I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable enough to like push through and keep going. I'm looking for more feedback to come my way. So yeah, I've listed a few names there. There's we did an event last night hosted by Sally Illingworth. She's only been on LinkedIn for the last 18 months. And she's built, I think she's got 45,000 followers on LinkedIn, all organically. She's doing a phenomenal job of personal branding, very authentic, very vulnerable. A lot of people don't resonate with her, but there's a lot of people that do. She's built an audience that's you know, highly engaged with the content. So great example to follow, you know.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned vulnerability. Are there any other elements that make the people that you just mentioned so effective when it comes to building their personal brand?
You know, you look at all successful people throughout history, like whether it's, you know, Eminem or Michael Jordan or Elon Musk, right? The only thing that they have in common is that they're all different than everyone else, right? They're all unique, and so it's about being yourself and then amplifying that, and that's what's special. People want to see who you are, what's unique about you, what's special about you. Whereas I think that a lot of people, when they think about personal branding and like being popular, they look at these people that are, you know, popular, and they try to like copy the way that they behave or the things that they say, and then so they're moving further away from the objective, which is being more yourself and being and so, you know, I think that that's a big part of what we're talking about here, personal branding. From a marketing perspective, it's not all about you, it's about the customer. So like it's got to be a balance. You first of all start with the content needs to be about the audience, but if you can share it in a way where you're sharing stories about, you know, yourself, people will resonate with that and they'll connect with you, and then all of a sudden you've got a brand which no one else can emulate, because it's uniquely you.
That's definitely a tongue twister. Yeah, awesome. Kicks off that one. If you were to, this is a bit of a strange question, given your standing, but if you were to attend the course, or if you were to put maybe an employee of yours through a course on personal branding, what would you expect that course to cover?
I think like they should walk away with a clearly defined strategy and personal branding map of what they're going to implement. So I think that working out some of those things as to, you know, who it is that you want to portray online, what areas of your life do you want to share, and then even maybe starting with like a couple of anecdotes, I think is really important. Like I've done a lot of public speaking training, we're told that stories connect with people more than anything else. And so I think it's like, okay, so how do I tell a story that shows vulnerability, that makes it relatable to the people I'm speaking to? So when somebody asks what you do, it's like if you had like a record label, for example, and I told you to tell me about that, like you wouldn't tell me how you piece together the vinyl and all that sort of stuff. You'd probably just play me a couple of tracks. So if I asked you about your business, I just want you to play me a couple of tracks, like tell me a couple of stories about your business. And so having that sort of prepared in advance, I think can help a lot. And so from a personal branding perspective, like for example, I will talk about when I started using LinkedIn and how I used to knock on doors and that didn't work, and how I tried to get past the practice manager at the plastic surgery clinics I was targeting and that didn't work. And then I tried using LinkedIn. I share that story because it breaks through the neocortex. People can relate to it. I also tell a story about when I started my business. I started the business from a place of desperation. I lost my job. My electricity got cut out. And, when people hear that story, they connect with me at such a deeper level. And I think that's what personal branding is all about.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. Have you read Talk Like TED, Carmine Gallo?
Yes. Long time ago, yeah.
It was the first book I read in that space. I was like, oh, wow, yeah. So I guess to that, let's go back to basics. In your opinion, what is a personal brand?
Well, I guess, what is a personal brand? Well, can I Google it?
By all means, we're going to put that on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, we can do anything. Yeah.
You were like, I would say it's marketing yourself as a product. Feel free to agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
we want your opinion.
I mean, obviously, personal means like from an individual, right? And branding, I think of branding like traditionally as like a product, right? So like Channel 10 or like, you see Nike, like, and Nike's a great example. I mean, like, if you think about it, right, if Nike got 10 people to share their story with their friends, it's probably going to be a positive story, right? Because they've got a really good brand. Whereas like if I asked 10 customers, I'm going to drop a brand in the mixer here, but like if I 10 customers of Garuda Airways, for example, to tell their friends about like the experience, it's not necessarily all going to be positive, right? Because of the sentiment that they built up. And I think that's what branding is. It's basically like, what do your customers think of you? Like, so in the old days, the brand would definitely define what the brand was, whereas these days, like, it's definitely the customers, the other way around. And so for personal branding, I think that it's got to be the same thing, but in a personal context. But it's interesting how the personal brands that do well are not necessarily the ones that have architected this, like, what do we want it all to look like? It's actually the ones that are more authentic. And I think the guys that are authentic, they do define what the personal brand is, but they do start from a place of authenticity and not just like what do we want to create that wasn't there already. And I think when you're creating stuff that wasn't there already, you end up copying like other people that you want to emulate, which doesn't work well. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Why do you feel personal branding is important?
I think we've all got a personal brand these days. And so I think like if you want to have exceptional results in the business context or in a professional context, that you really need to be thinking about your personal brand. You can't be hiding under a rock, no one's going to know about you. And then also if you're in business, it's just an awesome way to compete with the bigger brands, because people will say to me, oh, I can't compete with Chemist Warehouse, they're so big. But you have something that they don't have, which is the ability to be able to promote your personal brand. They've got no personal brand behind them. And if you look on the context of social media, you're always going to get better results reaching out to a potential customer from an individual than you will from a company. So on a one-to-one level, you've got an advantage as a smaller business because you have that personal connection. Like in my business, for example, my customers, they get to talk to me. Like, I don't talk to my team. My team are busy doing the strategies. And so I have a huge advantage over the bigger companies. Bigger companies, they get to talk to the director. And so, there's a huge amount of value there. and I make sure that the customers appreciate that value, and I've got a capacity because of that. I realise that I can only grow so much because I'm the one that's dealing with the customers, but the customers that I do deal with, they really appreciate that, and they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah, awesome. When it comes to that personal branding, do you have a written strategy behind it?
No.
No. Yeah, there we go. So it's just coming out. I know obviously you got the content strategy, but otherwise it's just an engagement point of view and everything like that.
No, it's something that I started doing really early. I started to do I have a written personal branding strategy? Not as such. I mean, when I started personal branding, I was in a sales role, and so I was using it. I was just getting my name in front of potential customers. And then when I knew that I wanted to move into entrepreneurship, I was thinking, okay, what can I do while I'm still employed to start building the foundation so that when I don't have a job and a salary, that I've got some sort of security. And so I started building up my personal brands on social media, started connecting with business partners, which I think would be leverage opportunities. And then I guess since then, I've been positioning myself alongside quite well-known entrepreneurs, and that's had a huge impact with the doors that it opens. Like, I'll get invited into these advertising agencies that deal with like Coca-Cola and different news stations and AFL stars, and they'll go, oh, this guy. We've seen you in a video with him, and that's why we got you in, and that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. Do I have that mapped out in a strategy? No, I guess I think it just comes intuitive to me now, because I'm always thinking about, how do I build, how do I get to the next level? How do I position myself alongside the right people? And so for me, it's very instinctive. And there's not many clients that are successful at personal branding that doesn't come instinctive to as well. So I think that you really have to want to do it, because there's definitely clients that don't want to do it. I know a lot of business owners that don't want to be they don't want the business to revolve around them. They don't want to be at the forefront of it. And that's okay. It's as a smaller business, it's going to be more difficult for those companies because they don't. It's just harder to have a competitive advantage. So I think sometimes it's good if you long term you want to be able to step out of your business, like at the start at least. To say, well, at the moment, growth is the objective, and I'm okay being the forefront of it and being the personal brand.
Yeah, cool. To that point, I guess, how do you measure the success of a personal brand?
I think it's important to get feedback from others. So not just like, what do you think has happened, but also feedback from clients, the people that you're looking to influence, people that are in your audience, get feedback from them on your personal brand. What do they think is good? What do they think is working? What do they think is not working? I think even with personal branding, I always relate it back to business objectives as well. Like, okay, yes, I feel like my personal brand is doing well. Is my business growing? Okay, because if it's not, like, you could be wasting a lot of time in an area which isn't producing any results. I think everything you do, your business should be growing while that's happening. Otherwise, there's a problem. And quite often, that's where your energy should be focused. Is where the problem areas are. So, I guess it's always going to be different. Like, you've got to map out what's a success look like for you at the start, and then set up metrics that track back to that, and then you can measure your success ongoing. I guess I have never really set any targets or goals or objectives around my personal brand, and in that way, it's been quite good for me because it's given me the freedom to be out. Like, I'm okay if it's the same in 12 months' time. I'm okay if it grows. It's definitely something that's like had a huge impact on my business. And social media, I mean, it's been a direct result of social media without a doubt. Like, social media has given me the leverage to be able to build my personal brand. But I guess you could look at number of followers, all that sort of stuff. I think progress is the most important thing. Like, everything should just be growing, I think that's the most important thing.
Cool. And something you said there, when it comes to the different channels, so you mentioned social, but online and offline, how do you choose which ones you're going to deploy from a personal branding point of view?
Just see audio is still good.
I should get you to Google the definition of personal branding for me. Funny you should ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. Mate, so what would you say? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I love the part about.
I just start rambling because I know you need content. So.
No, I think the part about about brands, how they used to be able to broadcast, they can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Which is so we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so so you mentioned social media then, but when it comes to the channels that you deploy, how do you select which ones you're going to utilize to build your personal brand?
Comes back to traction, like where I'm getting cut through, where I'm getting traction. Like it's funny because my clients, I offer LinkedIn services, so naturally, I focus on LinkedIn, and I do get a lot of traction there. And then I start getting traction on Instagram, and it's like, okay, I'll make my profile public. Had to delete a whole bunch of photographs to do that, right? It's still not ideal. Even though we offer LinkedIn services, I can't afford to ignore the audience there. And so it just comes down to, where you're getting cut through. Like Facebook, I know my audience is on there. I do, understand that the old demographic use Facebook more and that kind of stuff. Am I getting organic cut through? No, but I do remarketing on Facebook. It's pretty easy to set up. Anytime anyone engages with a call to action on LinkedIn or Instagram, or even on my website, they will get remarketed to on Facebook. So that's cool. That keeps people in the mix, and I try to follow people around the web. It sounds a bit stalkerish, but if they're downloading a piece of content, or they're moving down a customer journey, I want to be influencing them. It's a little bit like I always think of going to see a real estate agent when you want to sell your house. And then, you're driving home on the freeway and all of the billboards swap out to advertise that real estate agent. That's the way I think about digital marketing. If somebody's going to, go to my website, download a lead magnet, I want everywhere they go to be seeing my billboards and it being reinforced. And so that's quite easy to set up. You don't necessarily have to be really active on a platform to remarket to them there. At the moment, LinkedIn and Instagram are the ones I'm getting the most cut through on. I invest heavily in YouTube as well. Very slow results. People would probably think, what are you bothering spending all your time there? But the reason I do that is because you can establish evergreen video content there. So the videos that do well traditionally are the ones that have been up longer. They're longer form content, because YouTube is a search engine. So I won't go into it in too much detail because it's not a social media site. However, it is a very interactive search engine. People do engage with content on there, and so it's an area I'm fascinated with. And to give you some content on YouTube, I might have 800 and something subscribers. However, I'm getting 45,000 video views or something like that every month. So it's a lot of views that are coming from people that don't subscribe. And then so I'm fascinated by why do people watch and not subscribe? And those kind of things are very interesting. Yeah. It
is one, isn't it? The subscriber rates on YouTube are shocking these days. Really, but then, like I said, the long tail element. So it's really. You said something the other night. So we're going to go off the reservation for a bit. But
Good.
When it comes to personal branding and risk, obviously, is a very interesting court case starting today. How do you manage? These are our flat ones, so I think this almost falls into that sort of. But how do you manage risk when it comes to personal branding and putting yourself out there in that way?
Risk as to.
Because how about I put it this way then? How do you balance the authenticity and the risk?
Risk of what going wrong?
So risk by way of saying the wrong thing, losing clients based on any sort of content or messaging you put out there, as well as we won't go down so much a defamation case because that's a little bit different. But they're being authentic and engaging in an authentic way, but then offsetting that about how to manage your profile with people that you currently engage with, making sure that it's not adjunct in that way.
Yeah, the longer I've been doing personal branding, the more I just dive into it. I think the riskier the better. I think that I'm leaning into that area at the moment while being authentic. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to sit on the fence. I want to amplify my opinions about things, and it will upset some people. I understand that. So I think that a successful personal brand, people will love you or hate you. I think the area you want to be careful of is sitting in the middle, not having a opinion on things. It's very safe, but it's not going to do well as a personal brand.
Yeah. Awesome. Actually reminds me of Nike again. When it comes to content around personal branding, how often and how much are you creating to consistently feed your channels?
There's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of content that used to not make it to the channels as well. Like I used to create a lot. And like it's funny because I've still got all of the content. I'll go back sometimes and I'm like, oh, can I use that? Like, you know, and these days I will definitely use a lot more than I don't, because I think that if you're looking at something and working out in your head whether or not it's going to work, you may as well post it and work out whether it's not going to work. You learn more from live feedback, and there's a couple of channels which you can get away with it more on. So like Twitter and LinkedIn, you could post 50 times a day and it doesn't matter if 49 of the posts don't do well. If the 50th one's good, the 50th one's good. Whereas like on Facebook and Instagram, like it does affect your like if overall your content's not doing that well, like your next piece of content is not going to do that well. So you just got to think about the context of the platform again. You forget, like people only are used to using whatever they use. So like my dad, for example, he uses Facebook. So he doesn't see what happens on Instagram. He doesn't see what happens on LinkedIn. Whereas, you know, and my mum, like she won't see that stuff either. And like my sister will see what's on Instagram, but she won't see what's on LinkedIn. And so they just assume that you know what they've been watching or what they haven't been watching. But most of the time when I sit down with people, whether they're clients, family members, whatever, they've been seeing my video content on one of the social channels. So I think that most people these days have got access to at least one of them. Like even my granddad's the only person I know that's not on social media, but my grandmother is, and when she sees my pictures pop up on Facebook, she'll show them to him, so they're even reaching him.
Double impressions, yeah, finally, yeah. That's slightly once again off, do you have a feeling as to which, like, we know that, well, LinkedIn's talking about that they love video at the moment, but I've seen some stats that show that just text updates do really well. And
yeah.
I thought that, you know, it's because people click see more to see, you know, the rest of whatever that message may be. Do you have any, like, I guess thoughts around what looks like it's being prioritized at the moment on LinkedIn? Yeah,
it's video. But so about a year ago, it was text form updates. It was massively. They were getting, storytelling text form updates were doing well. You can still get massive cut through with them. I think that if you put a video, it'll do better, but people will ignore, when they think about video, they think about just the video. They don't think about the caption, and it's so important. If you can do the storytelling caption bit, throw a video in, you'll get so much engagement from people that won't even watch the video. So that it really makes a big difference. Like those captions are so powerful. So like when you create like longer sentences, shorter sentences, slightly longer, slightly longer, shorter. You create like a staccato effect in your brain, and it drives emotion. So as long as you're telling a story while you're doing it, it creates engagement, pretty much guaranteed to work. So you'll see like a lot of content being posting on social media, not just on LinkedIn, but with these like short sentences. And that's what's going on. They're doing that for a reason, to create an emotional response and an emotional trigger in the brain.
When it comes to personal branding, are there any elements or aspects that you would outsource?
So when it comes to personal branding, like as in content creation or? Well,
yeah, anything like whether it's management, content creation.
Yeah. I think it's really important to have a good website. Like if you're going to do as much as you can, outsource your website. I think that's really important. That's one area like you need to get really like good. It's like if your website, you've got to think of your website like your shop front, you know? If your products aren't displayed well and like you don't like the right things in the window and it's not mapped out the right way, then it's not going to do very well. So I think it's really important to invest in that area. It's really important to get good quality photographs. Like they need to be professional. And I think you need to be careful of getting the stock standard, like let's stand in front of a white wall with my suit and tie on stuff. Like you want to try and also stand out with photographs. So I think, you know, with Instagram and so on, it's become more and more important. When you're defining your personal brand, like you can throw words in there like, you know, do I want to appear fun? Do I want to appear trustworthy? And then you know, create photographs that emulate that. Even the way you dress, I guess. Like there was a time when I used to always wear a suit and a shirt, and like it comes from a place of not having the confidence, right? Because when I was like, I didn't feel comfortable doing it. I wanted to get out of those clothes as soon as I finished work, and I still wear a suit sometimes when I want to. It's not because I'm trying to like overcompensate for the fact that I don't have as much confidence. Just being clear on what those kind of things are, and then you know, portraying them in all your marketing and all you do. If you want to be fun and casual and, you know, hip, then make sure your photographs are fun and casual and hip, and the way you write is fun, casual, hip, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, cool. Who do you feel would benefit from a course on personal branding?
Anyone that is in sales, for sure. Any entrepreneur that owns a small business that wants to get a competitive edge, for sure. Anyone who's in entertainment, anyone that wants to create influence, wants to build their social media following. There's a lot of people, like there's not many people that wouldn't suit. Like I understand some people that don't want attention and stuff like that, and they're not interested in growing business. The chances are they're not doing this course, they're not watching this video. But I understand, and that's totally cool. But it's just got to, it comes back to mapping what your objectives are. Yeah. Comedians would be a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a dangerous place to brand. That's all about risk. Are there any activities that you think within the course that we should workshop to really help embed some of the knowledge around personal branding?
Yeah, I think like just getting really clear on what it is that people want, because like you can start creating this plan, and in a year's time could be different what you want now. Like just being clear on it, you know, knowing who you are, knowing who your audience is, and knowing where the values align. I think it's really important. We haven't really spoken about values much, but like that's when I talk about who you are, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about knowing what your values are and having them ranked in priority order. Like integrity is a huge one for me. I get it from my mother. Like so for me, like it's really important that what I do and what I say, like they map very closely together. And so like building trust really important to me. So you asked me earlier about engagement pods and stuff like that, and like it's important to me that sorry, just not the mic, but it's important to me that all the engagement that I get is authentic. Like I think it's important that you share content with your peers and you get feedback, and I think that you should amplify it, and I'm okay with sending links to a group of people, but do I think that you should be commenting on somebody else's post so that they comment on yours? Absolutely not. Like to me, that's inauthentic. And you know, the other thing is, and we might be getting off topic a little bit here, but like, I want to know what my audience wants to engage with, and I'm never going to learn if I got an inauthentic engagement.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. I think that wraps that up. So cool. Oh, yeah, sure.
So one of the things that I find when I talk to people about personal brand, trying to encourage them to, you know, build it up, LinkedIn and so forth, is they're always like, they don't find the time to do it. So
yeah.
Any suggestions on that front?
Yeah, Richard Branson runs 400 companies, like, so you've got time. Just making excuses. Yeah.
And the other one is when you see people starting out and maybe they're not doing so well, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see that you recommend that people would try to avoid?
With personal branding in particular?
Yeah.
Can we frame that up like you said last night? In that case, what are your 3 mistakes you see people making in personal branding?
Yeah, so I guess making it all about themselves. I guess like so a lot of people like will create these videos and they're not to help the audience at all. They're just like, you know, I want to create a vlog about my holiday to Italy. Like they just want to go on holiday to Italy and show off to all their friends. Like they're not creating it for anyone else. So you've got to think about adding value. Like it's really important, and I just don't see it enough on social media. I see a lot of insecurity, and I see a lot of people trying to push their own agenda. I do not see many people that are literally like, what am I adding value? And because like if you do any public speaking, like public speaking is a great example. So when I'm public speaking, I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. I'm not in my own head. I'm in the audience's head. I'm thinking about what they're absorbing. I'm feeling them. I'm feeling their energy. And so like I can't help but add value. You know, I know what my objective is, and I know what I'm going to add, the value I'm going to add. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, so I can change my approach plenty of times, but I know for a fact that I'll get the outcome. I think that's probably the second biggest mistake. It's the second biggest mistake is not adding value. I think the biggest mistake is not doing anything. You know, I think at least if you are doing that Italy trip and you are posting about it, you're gonna eventually, like, if you keep doing it long enough, get the feedback that you need to shift your approach and start adding value. So I understand, and but there is a lot of insecurity out there in the world, and people are dealing with it in all sorts of ways. And social media is a massive one, which is really amplifying it. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, social media is causing problems in our society." I honestly just think it's like a magnifying glass. It's just showing us, exposing what's already there. The third biggest mistake that I see people make is, I think that it's probably more of an opportunity than a mistake, but like collaboration is huge. Like I think that you can do so much more by partnering with others than you can on your own. So like for me, for example, like this is a very natural way to produce content. Whereas sitting in a room on my own, like talking directly to a camera, is not, and so that, first of all, like I think the content's better. Second of all, like if you're collaborating with others, like you can tap into each other's audience, you build social proof, you can gain access to other insights, and then maybe even like push it a little bit further, and like, because it's quite tempting, like it's very easy to create partnerships with people that don't have as big a following as you or have a similar following. What's a challenge is, how do you create a partnership with somebody who's got 10 times the following as you? And then all of a sudden, the people you're hanging out with are giving you different insights, and so I just think it's a missed opportunity, to be honest. A lot of people say to me, "Well, how did you get an interview with Grant?" I've got Grant Cardone later this month. It's a great example. Like, I'll share with you quite openly now. Like, I saw Michael Lane, who's the director of Success Resources, posted on LinkedIn, and he said, "We've got 15 spots to interview Grant Cardone for podcasts. Here's where you need to send your submissions." Right? So I send my submission. I send him a message on LinkedIn. I send him a message on Instagram. I've tagged him in about 25 posts since then. I'm hammering this guy, right? No response. So I messaged Grant Cardone on LinkedIn. I messaged him on Facebook. I messaged him on Instagram. No response. So I messaged his wife, Elena Cardone. And then eventually, Elena Cardone's assistant gets back to me and says, "You can interview Elena." So it's like, okay, cool. When can I interview her? And they're like, "Well, at the end of September." I said, "Well, I'm not in Sydney. However, I'll come if you can get me an interview with Grant as well." They said, "Okay, done." And everyone goes to me, "Well, how do you interview Grant?" I said, "I just asked lots of times," right? And the same thing with Kerwin Ray. Like, I reckon, it's so funny because when Kerwin Ray writes back and says, "Yes, okay, let's do the interview," I look past my message history and it's just me asking him for like 2.5 years. For the interview, but most people do. They ask once and then that's it, right? But it's been huge for my brand, and I think there's most people missing that opportunity altogether. They're creating content, they're just thinking about themselves, and they may be adding value. But if you leverage off of others that have got other insights and stuff like that, you can provide a lot more value. Like you can, amalgamate all of the people that can add the most value to your audience. You're still going to be positioned as an authority. You're not going to lose anything by introducing somebody else to your audience. You're just the facilitator, and people will see you as humble and you actually care about adding value to the audience. You're not concerned about just your own interest, and that builds a lot of trust.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. That was, I think we were talking about it earlier, that was one of the big things I took out of last